bit. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to give you a quick recap of SQL Server Reporting Services 2008 R2. I promise it's exactly one slide, so we can move on to Denali. But sometimes when we release 18 months in 18-month cycles, it's a little hard to keep up with what just happened, which actually happened not too long ago. It was just last year that we released 2008 R2. And then we'll talk about Denali, some of the pillars for SQL Server overall. And we'll talk about reporting services key investments. There are 3 of them specifically. And there are a couple of other kind of secondary investments we've also made. And then we'll actually look beyond Denali at some of the additional work that we're doing in the cloud and for the developer experience at the end. And I promise you there'll be a couple of demos too, so you won't be looking at slides the whole time. All right, so what did we do in 2008 R2? And we started pulling this slide together, my manager and I. He sent me the first version. I had done one on the side. And we looked at our 2 slides, and they had different things on them, and we had both missed half of the things on each slide. So that kind of tells you, when we start getting down the path of working on a release, that release is actually almost done by the time that we start thinking about how to talk about it to the public. And now when we have the slides looking back at 2008 R2, we're well into the next release in terms of product development. But we made some really great investments in the corporate BI scenario in 2008 R2. One of the big things that we had heard coming out of 2008 was it was still hard to create reports, especially for end users. So we spent a lot of time working on the collaboration features of report authoring in 2008 R2. And what became of that are features labeled here as shared data sets, report parts, and the report part gallery. And the gallery is what you're seeing on the right-hand side in the screenshot. It's basically a place where users can go and not have to start building a report from scratch. So as an IT person or other power users can come in and create things, parts of reports, that your end users can go and then put together and just alter instead of having to start from scratch. Because we know that the hardest thing for end users when they're authoring reports is, 1, they have no idea where the data set is or how to connect to it. Right? And 2, they start up the tool, it's a blank screen, they're totally intimidated up front, and they don't really know how to get started. So having the capability to define shared data connections, shared data sets, which are actually either just the statement around the query that you're trying to help them to define, or even caching the data for that data set itself, or actually visualizations. You can create maps, you can create charts, you can create tables and matrices, and those can all be report parts. And not only that, you can actually create parameters too. So you can store a parameter as a report part, and then your end users come in and they say, well, I want to use this connection, and I want to use this shared data set, or I want to just take this whole visualization, which is not just the visual layer, but actually also all of the data sets and data sources and parameters that go with that visualization. They just pull into their report, they combine multiples of them together, they alter it to fit what they need. They may change one of the columns that are being displayed, they may change the color of the report, but that way they don't have to start from scratch, and they can really get going very quickly. And we found this to be very successful in many, many different organizations that we've talked to after this release, and also some of our top customers. So that was some of the collaboration and sharing capabilities that we created for 2008 R2. We also added a bunch of new visualizations. And the biggest visualization that we added was map. And map is not just a geographic representation. It can be geographic. You can see 2 geographic examples down here. This is a map of the United States, and this is a map of Africa and Europe. And if you're looking at geography data, you have a lot of different options for how you want to represent that data. So you can have a map, which is either a Esri kind of map, or many of the different formats. We support many of those. And you also have the Bing Map service behind the scenes. So you can use Bing Maps also for representing your geographic data. On top of that, you can layer a whole bunch of different layers on top of the actual physical map. So here you're looking at 2 layers, this example down here. The blue shading is a set of basically shapes, right, that you can define. And you're defining the maybe the shading based on the population or something like that. You can have another layer, which is kind of an analytical layer, and one of the examples of that are the points that are on the map. So that's another thing you can do. You can also create bubble sizes, and you can add lots of different things on a map. On this one, you can see you can also have paths. So you can define, from one place to another, a shipping route or something like that. And you can layer that on top of your maps also. And as I said, maps are not just about geographic data. You can actually have any spatial data. So building plans or floor plans, any kind of those, store layout plans. Anything that you can represent geographically, you can do as a map. Our Xbox team actually uses reporting services maps, and what they use it for is they lay out the game plans for all the games. And if you've ever done usability with us, the way that they track and figure out how users are doing in a game is they have the layout of the game, and then they plot all the usage metrics of when, how long it takes someone to get through a section of the game, how many times it takes, how many times they die in that section, how many times, kind of the lag between the actions, how long it takes them to figure out this trick versus another trick. And they lay all of that on top of a geographic spatial layout in reporting services, and they track all those metrics. And that's how they improve games for Xbox. Some of the other improvements that we've made are around KPI support. We have very flexible KPI support. Talk about that in a sec. And then sparklines and data bars. So here's a sparkline and a data bar. Sparklines really give you like a trend. They're like a little collapsed chart, and they just tell you kind of the direction of the data. And then data bars are, of course, these things that you can add color to and tell you whether things are going well or not. So as far as KPIs are concerned, there are a set of KPI visualizations that come out of the box. You define the rules for them, and it's very, very flexible. So you can define any rules that you want, any number of rules, any level of rules. So you can have 5 levels or 10 levels or 20 levels. And you can also replace any of the visualizations that we have. So if you don't like the red buttons and the squares or any of the other sets that come out of the box, you can use your own images, point to them, set the rules for them. If you've ever seen BI Power Hour that I did 2 years ago, we built Battleship with KPIs, right? And we use images of ships as our KPIs. So, there are lots of really flexible and fun things that you can do with that. We also created an Ajax report viewer, which we shipped with VS, and then we did a whole bunch of customer DCR. So those are the big things that we did in R2. There were 2 things that we actually started working on that didn't make that release, and that was ad hoc reporting and alerting. A DCR. Design change request. So if you ever have been to the Connect site, you can actually file DCRs or feature requests. And DCRs are basically, there's a feature in the box, and we don't like the way it works. A feature request is, there's something missing in the box, we'd like you to do that. So if you, for example, if you don't like the way that we set point markers on map, you can file a DCR and say, yeah, it really should do this, or it really should behave like this. I don't like the layout of this dialogue. It's not very usable. Those are DCRs. And if you're interested in a feature request, then those go in as new feature requests. So the 2, like I said, the 2 key scenarios that we had that we didn't get to in 2008 R2 were ad hoc reporting and alerting. And you'll see that come back when I talk about Denali. All right, so how do we go about defining what actually goes into a release, right? Especially around BI, one of the big value propositions of Microsoft BI is that we have a full stack. And that full stack includes SQL Server, Office, and SharePoint, right? So in order to actually plan a BI release, which actually happens with 2 different releases, the release of Office and the release of SQL Server, we actually have a joint exercise. And there's a body that's called the BI Leadership Team, and it's a cross-divisional body, and it basically is a body of the leaders of both SQL Server, Office, and SharePoint, and they get together and they say, okay, what's the direction of BI that we want to push, and how are we going to divide up the work that needs to be done? So what we did was we defined a set of what we called 2-pagers, and if you've ever listen to Office folks talk, they do a whole bunch of 1-pagers before their 2-pagers. And that kind of gives you a high-level definition of the different gaps that we're trying to fill in our BI stack. And then after that, we came up with mission statements for what we needed to do in the BI world in the next release. And we said that basically the Office mission is to make Excel the best analyst tool of choice, right? So for all the high-end capabilities that you want, the calculations, data manipulation, statistical analysis, all that stuff, that's the Office mission and that's the Excel mission. The AS mission is to go and build a unified BI semantic model. This is a gap that we've known has been there for a long time, and we filled it very well because we had 3 of them, right? And we filled it a little too well. And we came back and said, no, we can't really do that anymore. We got to have one unified BI semantic model. And that's the mission that the AS team now has. And then the RS mission, our mission, is to deliver thin ad hoc reporting and self-service alerting. So those are the 3 kind of core tenets of what we're doing in this release across all of BI and the focus area of reporting services. We also had a set of second priority tasks and needs. These are basically based on feedback from all of you as you're using the product. The first was SharePoint performance. People love SharePoint integration. They love the fact that all of our BI assets surface in SharePoint, but it was a little slow. And even with 2008 R2, we had some good performance gains, but it was still slower than what we consider to be native mode. So we've been working on that. Also, SharePoint configuration and deployment. Again, something that we improved in 2008 R2, found that it's still a little bit hard, so we're continuing on the road of making that easier. And Office 2007, 2010 renderers. Before Denali, all of our renderers are in the 2003 format. I know a lot of you have been screaming for this, so we're working on that. And then also supporting bids in Dev 10 and Dev 11, so you have a great development environment for creating reports. All right, so the 2008, the Denali tenets for all of SQL Server are these 3 tenets: mission critical platform, develop and IT productivity, and pervasive insight. Platform, you'll hopefully hear about if you're going to any of our relational sessions. This is all about high availability, data warehousing, performing at scale, enterprise scenarios, and basically mission critical scenarios. Developer and IT productivity is lower administration costs, better development tools, more easy to manage deployments, that kind of thing. And then pervasive insight is really where reporting services spends most of its time. It's about reaching BI and BI to the masses. And that's been our tenet, our vision for BI for the last 11, 15 years, is bringing BI to the masses, and we're continuing down that path. Also, breakthrough performance, and this is all about the Vertipack engine. If you were at the keynote yesterday, we talked about that. I won't repeat the quote that was said about it. And delivering credible, consistent data to the right users at the right time. Okay? So if you look at insight, that last pillar, the main areas that we're investing in for reporting services in the Denali timeframe are these 3 areas. Empowering end users, and this is all about Project Crescent. You saw a little bit of a teaser at the keynote. I'm going to show you a little bit more of that. And then we have a session right after this one, actually, that will cover it in a lot more depth. So Crescent is all about end user ad hoc analysis and reporting. It's very highly visual. It's, everything's on the page. The user sees what they're doing all the time. It's very easy. It's metadata driven. And it's also presentation ready at all times. And the middle pillar is productivity and proactive intelligence. And this is all about alerting and end user alerting. Those of you who know reporting services know that we have notification services also, which is a very high-end developer experience. This is not that. This is all about enabling end users, people from the masses, to be able to create alerts and get alerts on data, on reports specifically. And I'm going to show you that. And then the renderers, as I talked about, the Excel and Word 2007-2010 format. And the last pillar is increasing efficiency, and this is all about our SharePoint integration, built in scale and out of basically enabling SharePoint as a shared service, reporting service as a shared service of SharePoint, and having a lot of new capabilities because of us becoming a shared service of SharePoint. Okay, so actually I'm going to start and go backwards, and we'll start with SharePoint. So the situation today, I alluded to some of this already, is basically we have SharePoint integration, And it's a mode of reporting services. And some of the feedback that we hear, like I said, it's kind of hard to configure and manage. It actually takes two completely different IT groups, usually, in a big organization to coordinate and cooperate to get that going, because your SharePoint farm is usually managed by one IT group, and your BI stuff is managed by another IT group. And because kind of the tasks were different and the capabilities were different, the skill sets were different between those two IT groups, it's kind of hard to get one of these things to gel, right? And to align their schedules and have them trade off. Well, who's responsible for doing the install? It's not us, right? So we're trying to fix that problem. And also that not all of the capabilities of managing a installation in SharePoint integrated mode were available to you directly within SharePoint. And that was hard for people managing it, because then you had to go to different tools to manage all the installation. Okay. So, like I said, the way that we're fixing this is we're going to have reporting services be a shared service inside of SharePoint. You monitor it like any other shared service in SharePoint. You configure it. It's one set of IT skills, because it's your SharePoint IT folks who are going to be able to do this, and they can leverage their skill set that they already have to manage a BI installation with reporting services. Okay, what are some of the benefits of this new mode? There's one app pool, right? It's a SharePoint app pool. You're not trying to manage separate permissions for the reporting services admin versus the SharePoint admin. The content databases, which used to be a completely separate database, are now in the SharePoint content databases, so you just have one set of databases to manage. We also are enabling WCF and claims-based communication. So this is one of the big requests that came out of SharePoint mode. A lot of folks use claims-based auth with SharePoint, and we didn't support that before. And now that we're a shared service, we can go ahead and do that. PowerShell commandlets are now supported for scripting. So you don't have another tool, which used to be WMI, for scripting. You now have PowerShell commandlets to do everything that you need to do. Central Admin UI now enables management of all of the settings and properties for reporting services. So again, you don't have to go to a separate place to do that. The logging is all integrated. This is another pain point that people found, where there's one set of SharePoint logs, one set of reporting services logs. It was kind of hard to correlate what was going on between those two sets of logs. Now it's one set of logs, and you can specify what of reporting services you want to include in those logs. And because we're a shared service of SharePoint, we automatically get their built-in scale-out and load balancing capabilities. So we didn't have to do a lot, and that's a benefit that we got basically for free for doing this work. In terms of performance, we've been working on performance for the Ajax viewer, and trying to bring performance basically up to par with native mode. And what we were seeing in our tests was that performance is actually slowest for small reports. For large reports, there wasn't much of a difference, but for small reports, there was a bit of latency because of the connections and then the way we have to kind of get through the whole system of SharePoint. So we've been working on that a lot, and we've basically seen overall a 30 to 60% performance increase, and it's now at par with our native mode capabilities and the performance there. So fixed. And the setup has gotten a lot easier also. There's one place when you go through SQL setup, you can go ahead and install an instance of reporting services in SharePoint mode. In terms of the IT experience and what IT folks need to do, the first thing is, of course, get this thing set up and running. You've got to have SQL Server. You need to get SharePoint. And there's an add-in that you set up for reporting services in SharePoint mode. And that's basically the setup work that needs to be done. You can configure and manage everything in Central Admin. You have PowerShell. I mentioned this already for WMI. You can use the SharePoint logs to diagnose issues. And you can also leverage SharePoint backup and restore for your administration purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the pages really quick, just so you kind of get a sense for what's in them. And like I said, there's a whole session that Prash is having tomorrow afternoon for digging deep into all of the capabilities. So here I am on my laptop. Everything's running on my laptop. And I can go to Central Admin. And now if you go under Manage Service Applications, you'll see that the Reporting Services app is right there. If I click on it, you'll see that I've been here before, and you have all of these capabilities. So you have system settings. This is where you manage basically the settings around when reports are run, how long they can take, the timeout settings, what capabilities there are, what sessions there are, enabling logging, the different types of security we support, whether you want to be able to download Report Builder via click once, whether you want to timeout, whether you want to enable client printing. All of those are set here. If I come back, you can manage jobs. I don't have any at the moment, but basically if you if you enable subscriptions and alerts and you want to manage them, you can do them here. Of course, key management is very important. The encryption key for reporting services, you can get that and set that and handle that here. And change, encrypt, restore, all that great stuff. And email settings, if you're going to enable subscriptions and delivery, you need to have your email settings, and you can do that here. And again, provisioning alerts and subscriptions. You can decide how you're going to do that in terms of whether you're going to use user credentials or whether you're going to store some credentials that those subscriptions will run as. And then for logging, if you go under monitoring, you can configure diagnostic logging, and you'll see there's a whole list of services, and now reporting services listed under that, and you can select what kind of service logging you want to do. See, there's a whole ton of options, so you should be able to get as many logs as you want. Caching time, the number of reports, schedule, security, sessions, all of that stuff can get logged here. Okay? Any quick questions about SharePoint integration high level that I can answer? Yep. I'm sorry? No, so native mode still exists in Denali, but a lot of our investments have been in SharePoint mode and improving SharePoint mode. Yes, so we still call it SharePoint integrated mode, but it's reporting services on SharePoint, basically. Yeah. You will see the setup, though. You will see the option that you can select accordingly. Yeah, so in setup, when you set up reporting services, you still have the option of selecting to install natively or installing SharePoint integrated mode. And the new SharePoint integrated mode is a SharePoint shared service. Yeah. Any other high-level questions I can answer about SharePoint mode? SP user tokens, it does use SP user tokens, yeah. So if you're alerting to the trusted account mode, yeah, you can come to my session tomorrow, but with claims, we will be flowing the actual claim to the user. We won't be flowing the SP user token otherwise. Right, so he said the answer was with claims, we'll be flowing the claims identity and not the SP user token. Okay. Session tomorrow is... process session tomorrow is, let me get it for you, 1:30 tomorrow? 1:30 tomorrow, he says. Yep. Yep. Oh, that's a really good question. Can you switch modes? Not currently. You need to install in either one mode or the other. We are taking feedback about whether we should build a tool to let you switch modes. So if you want that, raise your hands if you would like a tool to switch modes. Okay, good feedback. We are looking into that. Yes?
On the, when you install reporting services in integrated mode, you essentially turn all of your SharePoint servers into SQL servers for licensing purposes, and you have to license SQL for all of your SharePoint servers?
Yeah, let's take that offline and we'll talk about it after. This is a licensing question. Okay, let's move on because we got a lot to cover. And I'm not a licensing expert. Okay, so let's talk about operational reporting, self-service alerting, and Office 2007-2010 integration. Okay, so the situation today, users have tons and tons of data. We all know this, right? And for example, I get literally 20 reports that are this tall and this font this tiny in my email every day, and they're about bug counts, they're about the projects that I'm working on, and it's hard for me to figure out when things are kind of going wrong, other than if the bug numbers are really, really high, then I get some clue. But what I really want is to be able to do some exception reporting, right? So that's what alerting is really all about. As an end user, I'm looking at these really great reports, and what I want to do is just get notified when something in one of those reports goes over some kind of threshold that I want to define. So that's what, like I said, alerting helps you to deal with information overload, trying to define, as an end user, the rules that trigger these alerts can be very hard. We're trying to simplify it. We're giving you a nice, simple UI for setting those alerts and creating those rules. So the benefits of this integration are that you can create the alerts directly within the reports. As a user, I'm looking at the report already. I don't want to go to some abstract place to define that alert and have to decide what the data source is and all of that. The report already encapsulates all of that information. I just want to say, I want to alert on this particular piece of information in this report, and send me an alert when the rule meets some kind of condition. So today, these alerts can be created off of reports that are built in either Report Builder or in Visual Studio. That means that they don't work against Crescent reports yet, right? So we're working on Crescent, we're working on alerting. We have to build it on top of something that is already there. Yep?
You say today, what do you mean?
I'm sorry, I mean Denali. Yeah, in the beta. With the next CTP, you'll see that this is the way that it works. Good question. For me, it's today. For you, it's in the future. So it's all about detecting important data changes, like I said. And you can build really easy to use rules. You can schedule them. The scheduling is just like a subscription and reporting services. You have all those same capabilities.
Set up alerting, does it store your alert in SharePoint?
Yes. Yep. Yes, if you create alerts, I'm going to show you that in the demo. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I'm a little confused. I haven't seen this before. The alerting in the report. Report is something that happens at a fixed time point, not be a constantly dynamically changing thing.
Yep.
So are you doing this after you've scheduled your reports to run on some interval?
Yeah, so the way that the reports run and the way that the alerts run are completely separate schedules. So you can schedule the report to refresh every day, but you can schedule your alert to run every minute. That's up to you, right? We'll just go ahead and pick the right query, and yeah, it'll go run the query and everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it actually only works in SharePoint integrated mode. So if you are in native mode, there will be no alerting in native mode. Oh yeah. How many of you use SharePoint integrated mode already? That's a good number. How many of you are using native mode? Oh, okay. Are you sad? A little sad. Okay.
Just offered something.
All right. Feedback taken. All right. So I basically covered all this. So let's go ahead and dive to the demo. It'll be a little easier to understand. Oh, before we do that, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So this is the way that it actually runs underneath the covers. And you can see it is, because we are in SharePoint integrated mode. There is a piece of the alerting service that sits on the SharePoint web front end. There's the service itself and the scheduling and the running of the alerts. That all happens on the back end on the SharePoint app server. And the front end talks to the config databases and the content databases, and the back end talks to the report server shared service. Okay. All right. So, yep.
Does that architecture support SharePoint being in the cloud, like calling web zone, and then SSRS?
Yeah. So the question is, does that support SharePoint running in the cloud? No, not yet. Okay. All right. So how it works is the user runs a report. They create an alert definition. That's happening here. They save that alert definition. It goes into the alerting database. And there's a SQL Server job agent that looks at those and figures out when those need to be run. When a job gets scheduled, it goes in the alert queue. There's a data feed. All of the data goes through a data feed. The user actually selects which data feed they want to define the alert on. We apply the conditions that are defined. We create an alert instance, which is the mail message that's associated with the alert, and then we deliver that mail message. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to actually do the demo. And for the purposes of the demo, I created a very simple little report. And it's just this project tracking report. It just has a few rows in it, just to make it easy to understand. I've got Adam. I got each of the folks on my team. They all have tasks that they have to do. And the tasks have an ETA date, a due date, and a completed date. And you can see here that this completed date is later than the due date. And that's because people were at a conference in Atlanta, so he didn't get his job done. And I want to know when those kinds of things happen, right? So right when I'm looking at the report, I can go to Actions, and I say, New Data Alert. And that's going to bring up the alert definition UI. And you can see if I had, this is the report data name, which is a set of data feeds that comes out of that report. So a report can generate one or more data feeds, depending on the number of data regions and how you basically structure your report. But the user can come in here and say, I want to look at the data feed from this part of the report or this part of the report. They'll see the data, and they can actually define the alert rules based on that data. The alert has a name, so I can say it's a, well, let's call it Project Alert Atlanta, so we know it's different. And then alert me if any of the data, anything in the data feed has or does not have, right? It's a yes or no kind of question. And then we can create rules. And the rule can be on the fields in that data feed. So I can say I want to be alerted when the completion date is not, is before or after. And you have the option to either type in a date directly here, select a date, or you can go to field selection mode, and that will allow you to select another field. So I want to know when the completed date is greater than the due date, and I can go ahead and then add another rule of a different kind or something like that. But that's all I need, this very simple alert. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have is, not is equal to.
Is greater than, thank you. Okay, is after. If the completed date is after the due date, then I want to set alert. And I can schedule it daily, weekly, hourly, minute, and every X number of days. There's just some advanced settings for when to start it and stop it. You can actually then come in here and tell who it's going to go to, and you can put a message. Okay, now I can save the alert. Can you restrict the ability to set minute-by-minute alert? I don't think you can control it at that level from an administration point of view, but that's a good DCR to put in. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah? That's true. You have the ability to administer them, so I want to show you that UI in a sec. All right, so I've set up that alert. I'm going to go back, and I can, when I drop down the report now, as an end user, I can come in and I can do all these things if I have permission. I can manage the report, the parameters, share data sources. And the new thing we have here is manage data alerts. And that's only going to show me the data alerts on this particular report. Not in this UI. So this is me logged in as SQL BI, the user, and I'm only seeing my alerts for this particular report. All right, so the alert was created. It's this alert right here. And I'm going to choose to fire it right now so I can get something. And you'll see it'll run. It'll just take it a sec to run, and it'll do that. So I've got some other alerts that I had created before, and you can see when it was last run and what that looks like. And what it's going to do is actually deliver that alert. I don't have a mail server on this machine, so I just stuck it. I put it on a folder for the moment. So I'm going to go look at it. Of course, you can send this to a regular email if you have a web server running. You can point it to your web server. And that goes into this nice little folder. And you can see that the latest email message is that one that was generated. And if I open it up, it'll show me what conditions were met. So here's the email that was generated. It was sent on behalf of me, the user, sent it to myself. And it says George is late on his task. And it has a link to go directly to the report, and it tells you what the rule is that triggered the alert. Okay? So all of that was really easy to do as an end user. I didn't have to do a lot of configuration or anything. It just pointed to the data, set my rule, and created it. As an administrator, then, I can come in and go to Site Actions and go to Site Settings. And now under Site Settings, you'll see there's Manage Shared Schedules, Service Site Settings. I can manage data alerts also. So now this is me as the administrator. I can come in. I can see all of the users in the site. There's only one right now. I can see all of the reports and all of the alerts for all of the reports. And I can come in here and I can manage the alerts as the administrator. Okay? Make sense? Yes? Yeah, that's a good question. Is email the only distribution? It is the only distribution right now. Yeah. Yes? Can the view show the frequency of the alerts? Yeah. Let's see. I guess I don't see that right here. You can see it definitely as the end user. You can see the frequency. You can edit it. I may not have turned on the permissions for this account to see it, so they should show up there. Any other quick questions about alerting before we move on? Yeah, so this list would show you all of them for all of the users. You can filter by user, and you can filter by report. So that's what the administrator has capability to do. I happen to be the administrator and the user in this case, so you're only seeing one set of alerts. Okay? All right, let's switch back. Actually, let me go back, because I want to set up for a... Let me rerun this report so I can talk about the next thing. Okay.
I have a question about alerts.
Yep.
Can you manage them on a per report basis so the users can put alerts on this report but not that report?
Say that again? Sorry.
Can you manage the alerts so that a user can put alerts on one report but not another report?
Yeah, of course. So can you manage so that users only have the ability to create alerts on one report versus another? Well, actually, you can't manage. It's the same permission for them to be able to view the report as to create alerts off of them. So if they have permissions to see the report, then they can create alerts off of them. There's not a separate create an alert permission. Okay. Let's talk about the XML rendering extensions. The new rendering extensions are the docx format. This has been around for a while. We're just trying to catch up here. And the biggest thing about this feature is it should look the same and it shouldn't break anything. Okay? So when you're testing it out, run your reports and make sure that they look the same. The benefits that we get are the zip compression, which means that the exports are actually much smaller, which is good because when you go to deliver them, the delivery is much smaller. We also have now support because of the new format of the additional rows in Excel. And by chance, we didn't intend this, but there's actually more color support also because of the new format. So those are the big enhancements. Again, this is just really about making your existing reports export in the new format without changing or breaking anything. Okay? So the way that you get the new format is they show up automatically. So when you go to a report, and you see the actions, there's the export menu. This Excel option and the Word option will automatically export in the new format. If you want the old format, you can still turn it on. You need to go to the configuration, export, the reporting services configuration file, and turn on the old export formats. They are still there. We do still support them, but we intend that most people are going to want the new format, so we created them by default. Mm-hmm.
Is that make the old formats available in addition to the new formats or instead of?
Is it in addition to or instead of? It is, I can't remember. Somebody remember in the back? Do you remember, Bob? I think it's in addition to, because they're configuration options, and if you enable them, I think it adds a new one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Configuration option for PowerPoint?
Good question. Where's the configuration option for PowerPoint? I really wish it was that easy. We add a configuration option, and all of a sudden it exports in PowerPoint. That's something that we don't have yet. And we do hear feedback that people want export to PowerPoint, and we haven't done it yet. Yeah. Did you say?
Yeah, about the settings, there is a separate format.
A separate format, yeah. So you can get the old format and the new formats, and the old ones, I think, are labeled something different, so you can differentiate them. Okay, so let's move back. Okay, so let's move on to Crescent, Self-Service BI, and Project Crescent. This is our vision statement around Crescent. Crescent is an interactive data exploration and visual presentation experience. And the three key things there are interactive, visual, and experience, which is kind of summarized on this particular slide. So we want end users, true end users, to be able to create reports that they want to create. And it's still really hard, right? So we want to have a web-based UI for them to go to. There's no install required. That leverages a familiar paradigm, which is obviously Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint, and be able to click on things and be able to see the result right away. Okay? The metadata that drives all of this is the next generation of a Power Pivot model. So in 2008 R2, we shipped Power Pivot. In the next release, there is a new version of the Power Pivot model, which has a whole bunch of new objects and properties that you can set, which really light up the Crescent experience. And if you come to my next session, you can see some of that. There's also sessions on Power Pivot that will tell you exactly which options to set to make Crescent really, really great. Out of the box, if you just create a simple model, you'll get a good experience, but it just won't be as good as if you set some of the more complex properties or some of the additional properties, like the default formats and what shows up by default when you click things. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But it's very rich, right? That metadata tells us what the model is, and so we understand all the relationships between the data, and we can do all the powerful things, create all the queries, allow interactivity by default, and the user doesn't have to define any of that. It's presentation ready at all times, which means we design specifically for the screen. Everything fits on the screen, and the user can project it just like they project a PowerPoint slide. And that's one of the very core tenets of Crescent, is to be able to deliver that way. So Crescent is a Silverlight application. It requires Silverlight. It's in the browser, but it requires Silverlight probably 5 by the time that we ship. Okay? So I'm going to show you a demo. We'll talk a little bit about Crescent. But like I said, the biggest parts of Crescent, and if you are looking for more Crescent content, that will be at my next session, which is on the other side of Atlanta, in the other building. Okay, so let's go ahead and come back to the Power Pivot site. So I have this shared document. You can, I will show you this real quick. I won't do it this way, but. Is Crescent going to work in both modes? Native and SharePoint. That's a good question, and the answer is no.
SharePoint only?
It is. Crescent is SharePoint only. It's in the browser. SharePoint is the center of the universe. You're right.
Your universe.
What's the browser compatibility for Crescent? Anything that supports Silverlight. And IE, I can't remember. I think it's actually 6 or 7 and above. And Safari, Firefox, yeah. Yep. We still need to do some testing there, but they should work. Oh, good question. Windows Phone 7. Yeah, we're talking about that right now. There is not that capability right away, other than you can go to a browser and you can point at any browser, but it's not a great experience, and we know that, and we're looking at that. I can't tell you there are no plans set yet, but we're working on it. Okay, so you can launch Crescent in a couple of different ways. If you have a Power Pivot gallery, you'll see that if your Excel workbook has a Power Pivot model in it and you're working in that mode, you can actually launch Crescent directly from here. That's the only way that Power Pivot worked in the past, is you had the Power Pivot models that way. In the next version, in Denali, you can actually build a Power Pivot model and have all the data reside on the server. So it doesn't have to be an Excel workbook, and you can scale up. That's the thing that Amir talked about yesterday at the keynote. And that's actually how we've set up some of these demos, is they basically point to Analysis Services server and look at the data source from there. And that's really easy to do. I can just show you one of them. There's a new data source type, Microsoft Business Intelligence Semantic Model. And you just connect to it like any other AS server. But what that does is it tells us we can issue DAX to it, essentially.
If I'm running in claims mode, does that mean I can store a Windows credential and be able to still use Crescent against claims SharePoint?
Good question. Follow up with that after. And ask Prash, OK? All right. So let's go back. And the demo I'm going to show you right now is just a little, it's a manufacturing kind of retail manufacturing demo. So it's Tailspin Toys. It's a fictitious toy company, and they, we can find out what they do. So I'm going to go ahead and add a title. So you can see, like I said, Crescent runs in the browser. You can see all the browser Chrome. I'm going to get rid of some of it just so we can have some more space. But it has a ribbon. And on the right-hand side is where all of the metadata for that model is. So in this case, I have products, I have prices, some geographic data, some sales data. I can start looking at that data just by clicking anything if it's set up that way in the Explorer. And this is, again, metadata that resides in the model. You set, as a person creating the model for an end user, this is a way to enhance that experience by defining the default fields for that particular entity, right? Product is an entity, it's a thing. People want to report on things, and you can tell the end user what the most important attributes of that thing are. And the model defines all of that. So in this case, we have helicopters and airplanes that we create and sell. And you can see the descriptions of them. And they're targeted at a particular demographic or type of user. Okay? And you saw this in the keynote where I can really easily go and change this to a card type of layout. And that's one of Crescent's core tenets, is to be able to modify the look of the data within a single click. So now I have the exact same information, just in a different format. Okay? All right, so those are all of my products. And I can come in and look at the demographics. Like I said, there are different types of users that we target these products to. And I'll select, let's do revenue. And, OK, so let's do that. And I'll do the category of the product. And we actually created a new category of products. And that's our collective pitch products category. That's right there. And you can see the sales for it. And of course, within 6 or 7 clicks, I'm able to have this really nice looking report. And all the interactivity that I want is actually here automatically. I didn't generate any queries. I didn't author any queries. I didn't have to do anything to tell what data is related and how it's related. But I can go ahead and click Professional. And you can see that our new product line, Collective Pitch, only has 2 products. And we sell it all to our professional users, right? If I click Trainer, then you can see the contribution of the trainer and that list of products that are under the trainer product category. And I'll go ahead and show you again the what's on the right-hand side is the way that you can control what fields go where. So there's default behavior out of the box, right? You saw me click fields, and they went in the right place. Measures go into the right place. The axes go in the right place. But if you don't like what we do by default, you can control it by changing the layout of the fields here. I can go ahead and change this to scatter, which is very similar to the other demo that we do. So you'll see products show up. I can come in here and turn on labels. So I can choose where the labels live. I could say I want them center. I can turn it off, the title, things like that. Okay? And if I put in month, it'll figure out that it's a date, and it'll go and put that on the play axis. And then I can play it. And I'm not going to do that race thing. So you can see these are actually real manufacturing trends that were put in. And you can see that trainer, if I put this here, if I go back, it gets a nice jump in sales because of the holidays in December, right? And then it kind of goes down. And when we introduce a new product, which is Collective Pitch, new product category, it has a really huge amount of sales up front, and then it kind of tapers back, right? And then if you look at the size of the bubble, if I hover over it, you'll see there's information about that particular bubble. You can see there's one product for collective pitch that we introduced back here. And then here we have two products. So when we introduced the second product, we got another nice bump in sales here too. Okay? Stuff like that, it's really easy to discern and see in one of these types of charts. And they're really easy to create. Okay, so if I bring it back in, another thing that we do is I said we design specifically for the screen, right? So screen, not much real estate. So we need to be able to have ways, new different types of visualizations that help us consume a lot of data all at once, right? So one of the ways that we do that, one of the visualizations that we created is this thing called tiles. And if I come in here, let me actually make this a little bit bigger, and turn this into a tile. What that does is it gives me a way to navigate the different products, right? And it creates a little space for me to add information specific to that product. So if I come in here and say, well, I want to see the sales by region, I can go ahead and do that, right? I can get revenue and the quantity. So on the right-hand side, I have information about all the different products. And on the left-hand side, I have information about specific products. That's really hard to do in a report, right? You got multiple levels of granularity going on and containment and all of that, right? But as an end user, it's really easy for me to do. It makes a lot of sense. I want to navigate individual products, and I want to see some summary information, okay? So when we say design for the screen, once I have something I really like, right, I want to be able to save that. And I can go ahead and just save it. And it's going to save back to SharePoint. So I'll just call it new. And it'll go ahead and write that to SharePoint. I can go back to my document library. That's F11. Go back. Then I can manage it in all the different ways that I normally manage reports. So there's my Tailspin demo new. And you can see I can manage data sources, and I can go ahead and run it just by clicking on it. I can grant permissions to it, that kind of thing. So if I go ahead and run it, you'll see it works just like Excel services. If you use Excel services, it shows up in preview mode, and your users can have interactivity just in preview mode. They don't have to go to edit mode, right? You have some users who are going to be just consuming the reports that other people built, and they'll see it in this mode without all of the other Chrome around it, okay? You can actually also go into Silverlight full screen mode, which is really cool. So if you're going into a presentation, you want to walk someone through your thought analysis for how you reach some kind of conclusion, you can go to full screen mode and you can present it, and you still have all of the interactivity. It just looks just like a presentation, right? Okay? So, yep. Yeah, can you make it a web part in a SharePoint dashboard? Yeah, it's just the page, so you can just use the regular web part page and do that. Can you link it up to filters? Not yet. That's a good question. So we haven't exposed the filters to the SharePoint filters yet. That's something that we'd like to get to, but we probably won't in this release. Okay? All right. Yes? Can you link from here to a detailed report? That's also another good question. Not yet. So there are tons of features we'd love to add in. We're focusing mostly on the core visualizations and interactivity. And we actually run our team with Scrum. You guys kind of know what Scrum is. There's actually a couple of presentations on it here. So we have a backlog. And there are over 1,000 things in our backlog that we would like to do. We won't get to all of them in this release, obviously. So we'll continue to work on it. Oh, yeah, you saw a demo of the PowerPoint output from SQL Pass. We did that for a couple of reasons. We wanted to show that it works, and we wanted to ask Silverlight to fix the bugs that we had found in that prototype, and we wanted to have a PowerPoint team also fix some bugs, and they're working on both of those. So we hope to have that capability. It probably won't be in Denali, but hopefully soon after. We are looking at a release that is in line with Office 15, and it would probably be around that time frame, something like that. Yep. Will Crescent have maps? Probably not in the first release. That's a good question. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What about data security? Do you ever be bold enough to
Yes, data security. So Power Pivot models in the next version will support row-level security. So you can define it in the model, and users will only see the rows that they have permissions to. Okay? All right, so that gives you kind of a high-level overview. That's not all the features, obviously. Like I said, you can come to the next session, which starts right after this one, and we'll look more in depth at those capabilities. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. What if you want to actually print it out? That's something that we're working on right now. You will be able to print out essentially what you see on the screen, right? So if you think about it, it's actually really hard to decide what you're going to print out if you want to do more than that. So if I have a band and I have all of these different things, do I want to print out a page for every single instance of those things? Probably not. Yeah.
Before you did that, it was the whole setting that was you scroll through,
Yes.
and it obviously stopped at the bottom of what we saw visualized.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that go to multiple pages until that whole set that was in that scroll set?
That's a good question. Yeah. So if you have a table that doesn't fit on the screen, it has a scroll bar, wouldn't you expand it and print that out? We could, but we probably won't be able to get to that. So you'll be able to print what's on the screen, and that's what will be in the first release. Uh-huh.
So kind of along the same line, can you create a multi-page report?
Can you create a multi-page report? I don't know yet. It's designed. We have a spec around it. We don't know if we're going to get it done. That's a good question.
Did you say that this is in the web browser?
Yes.
Web browsers are designed to be the whole screen to be scrolled to wherever.
Yes.
So could you indicate to the tool that it's 100 feet long?
You have no idea how many hours we've spent debating that and whether that's a good idea or not. It's something that we could do. Right now, it's designed for presenting and being able to see everything when you present it. And we don't, things scroll by default. We could enhance it later, and it could do that. One of the things we are looking at is to be able to have either multiple pages, so if you want to do that, you can, or have multiple size pages. So you can pick, like you do in PowerPoint, to have multiple different size pages or different resolution pages. We're looking into all of that. It's not done, so I can't promise you which one's going to make it. We are looking at those. Uh-huh.
Can you, in turn, take what you've done here and export it to a conventional report, which you then can do these other things?
Oh, that's a really good idea. So can you take what you do in Crescent and export it to a regular report? Yes and no. That will not be supported, but you could try it. Underneath the covers, it's DAX, right? So, and it is RDL. So we understand RDL in our other tools, but there are new constructs that come with Crescent that our old tools won't understand. Like, for example, you have a band. Report Builder in this release is not going to know what a band is. So that's not going to work. But some things may work. We're not sure yet. Okay? Yep.
Just looking at the URL, it's on VMode implementation. What are the other VModes that Crescent's going to support?
I'm sorry, what are the other?
Looking at the URL, it's on VMode equals presentation.
Yeah.
Are there other VModes that it supports?
Yeah.
Just thinking about how you can manipulate it if you don't support PowerPoint or multi-page yet.
Yeah, so there are only two modes. There's edit mode, well, three modes. Edit mode, preview mode, and full screen mode. Those are the different modes. Okay? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, different size resolutions. Right now, it works like PowerPoint. So if you design for, the default page is 4:3. We don't have another one yet. We're talking about putting in other resolutions. But if you project to a resolution that's not what the presentation is designed for, it does the exact same thing that PowerPoint does. It'll show you the black bars where the resolution doesn't fit. Okay? Yeah.
Can I use other data sources like Oracle or ODBC?
So can you use other data sources like Oracle or ODBC? You can point at whatever data source Power Pivot supports, which is a lot of them. But if you want it to run really, really fast, you want to cache the data that you want Crescent to go against. So you can basically point it at Oracle and then cache the data that you want to show to your end users. There is a mode where you can run queries directly against SQL Server, and that's called Direct Query. And that's a new feature also of Power Pivot, where you can create a model, and it can point at SQL Server and run against the SQL Server relational engine. Okay? That's only going to be supported for SQL Server in this release, probably. Uh-huh. Why did we not incorporate it into Report Builder? Oh, that was like a 2-month discussion. A couple of reasons. When we went off to do ad hoc reporting, we also knew that we had a really big gap in thin reporting. So we wanted to have a report authoring environment that didn't require an install. So it's Silverlight, it's thin, it runs in the browser. Okay? So if we used it with Report Builder, even though it supports click once, is a WinForms application. Okay? And that just wasn't going to help us address the other gap that we had. Okay? Is it going to replace Report Builder? The answer is no. There are tons of scenarios that Report Builder and BIDS support, and they're called operational reporting, that Crescent is not designed to do, right? They're just basically different scenarios, and they have different requirements. If you want pixel perfect, I can control everything, you want BIDS and Report Builder. You want ad hoc reporting, you want an answer to something, and you're going to let us control pretty much what it looks like, you want Crescent, right? Okay? Okay, let me finish. I know there are tons of questions, and then we can take some more questions. Or you can come to my other session, which I'm sure lots of people will ask all of the same questions too. Okay. So in addition to Denali, reporting services actually ships in 3 different boxes. We ship in Office, we ship in Visual Studio, and we ship in SQL. And now we also ship in the cloud, okay? So in addition to Denali, we're working on Dev 10, Dev 11, and also SQL Azure reporting. So for Dev 10 and Dev 11, it's really just about moving the BIDS environment into those 2 environments, moving to VS 2010. This work is actually complete, and it uses the SQL 2008 R2 engine, and it will be in the next CTP that you'll see. And then we're working on migrating right now to Dev 11, and for that, what we want to do is actually take our installation of Report Builder, of BIDS, and the viewer controls out of Visual Studio so that we can release them on a slightly different schedule, because when we release in Visual Studio, we have to get the code there a lot earlier than we would like to, and that keeps us from being, releasing a version that supports Visual Studio when Visual Studio is shipped. And that's been a real pain point for our developers, right? So we want to separate those installs, and we want to be able to ship controls and BIDS for Dev 11 when Dev 11 ships. Okay, so that's what we're working on now. Yay!
How about multi-targeting versions of SQL Server?
Multi-targeting versions of SQL Server, that already works. We did that for R2. So if you are going against...
Forward that you're going to always hopefully go back to 2008 at least?
Hopefully, will that carry forward? That's hopefully, yeah, we'll see. Don't know now. Right now, it works great. You can target multiple versions.
Well,
we'll see.
2 versions.
2 versions, yes. Okay, so we also, not too long ago, I think back in January, we shipped SQL Azure Reporting, which is a service of Azure. SQL Azure is the database in the cloud. SQL Azure Reporting is reporting in the cloud, okay? So this is right now targeted at developers and system integrators and consultants and IT departments because it leverages corporate reporting that we have in our environment. So it uses BIDS and Report Builder to be able to publish reports that you can then view and run and manage in the cloud, okay? So great benefits in terms of scalability, elasticity, all the stuff that comes with cloud. It's very cost effective. It's a service. You pay for the service, and that's all you need to pay for, okay? Excuse me. we worked really hard to make sure that the exact same functionality that we have in terms of report design are supported in the cloud in the same tools. There's not a separate tool for designing in the cloud. Leverages all of the great infrastructure that comes with cloud. RS multiple instances, being able to run that, that's all seamless to you, right? Azure handles that for us. And you can co-locate your databases with the RS instance in the cloud. Like I said, currently there's a limited CTP. It's already closed, but there is a URL that you can look up in my presentation so that you can sign up for the next CTP. The other thing I mentioned was publishing. It's just changing the URL that you target. So right now, if you're in SharePoint mode, you publish to SharePoint mode, you put in an HTTP. When you publish to the cloud and SQL Azure reporting, the only difference is the URL that you're putting in. And that's really important, right? Because now you can have one design. You can run it on-premise or in the cloud. And all you do is target your deployment to one of those locations. There's some really great examples that you can see already. Some of them we have put up ourselves, and some of them our partners have put up, and those are listed right there. Any questions about Dev 10, Dev 11, or SQL Azure? Uh-huh. Yeah, that's done, actually, and it'll be in the next CTP. Yeah. I'm sorry, yeah? Oh, we have Denali in Dev 10, yes. No, we're not going to go back and put R2 in Dev 10. Yeah, it'll be Denali in Dev 10. Right. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, so that gives you an overview of everything that we're doing. In terms of what's next, if you actually go to the BI booth, they have these really cool little handbooks that have all of the BI sessions in them. So you don't have to search through all of the big handbook to get the BI sessions. Like I said, I have a session right after this on Crescent. Pros has a session on SharePoint tomorrow. There are at least 2 sessions on designing Power Pivot models and making them work great with Crescent. And if you come and play our game, there's some great prizes for Crescent downstairs. And the next CTP will be available hopefully sometime this summer. You can go and have your badge scanned at the booth, and you will get an email when the next CTP is publicly available. So that's good. Right. Okay, so thank you very much, and I've got time for a couple of questions.